The common picture of Persephone is a girl picking flowers, a victim stolen away to a dark realm. But that's only half the story. The other half is about a powerful queen who ruled the underworld, commanded spirits of vengeance, and wasn't afraid to trample her husband's mistress into a plant. The question is, how did she become both? What's going on, everyone? My name is Jason. I'm a fantasy author, and this channel is all about the fascinating mythology and characters throughout our history. Today, we're exploring the dual nature of Persephone, a goddess who embodies both the beauty of spring and the terrifying finality of death. Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter, was known to the gods by another name, Ore, the Maiden. She spent her days in idyllic meadows with the daughters of Oceanus, gathering flowers, completely unaware that her own family was plotting against her. Her uncle Hades, Lord of the Dead, had decided he wanted her as his queen. He knew her mother, the overprotective Demeter, would never approve, so he went over her head directly to Persephone's father, Zeus. Not only did Zeus agree, he actively helped plan the abduction. The trap was a flower. As Persephone and her friends picked roses and violets, Gaia, the earth goddess herself, caused a single impossible beautiful narcissus to bloom. Its fragrance was intoxicating, and Persephone, drawn away from her companions, reached out to pick it. The moment her fingers touched the stem, the ground split open. A chasm appeared, and from the darkness, Hades thundered out in his golden chariot, pulled by immortal horses. He grabbed the screaming goddess and dragged her down into his realm, and her cries for help were heard by only two beings, Hecate, the goddess of magic from her cave, and Helios, the all-seeing sun god. But by the time anyone could react, she was gone. The only trace left behind was a field of scattered flowers and a terrifying silence. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, felt her daughter's cry in her soul. When Persephone didn't return, a frantic search began. For 9 days and 9 nights, Demeter wandered the earth, holding a flaming torch in each hand and refusing to eat, drink, or rest. The world began to feel her sorrow. On the 10th day, a desperate Hecate came to her, and she told Demeter she'd heard Persephone's screams but hadn't seen who took her. She did, however, have an idea of who might have. Together, they went to Helios, the sun, whose vantage point in the sky meant he saw everything that happened between gods and mortals. Pitying the grieving mother, Helios told her the brutal truth. Hades had taken her, and Zeus himself had been the accomplice. The betrayal was absolute. Enraged and heartbroken, Demeter unleashed her divine wrath not on the gods but on the world. She abandoned her duties, forbidding the earth to produce any fruit. She declared a universal famine, starving humanity and by extension depriving the gods of the sacrifices that they craved. She vowed she would not set foot on Mount Olympus or allow a single seed to sprout until her daughter was returned, and thus the world began to die. It didn't take long for the crisis to reach a breaking point. Mortals were on the verge of extinction, and the other gods, missing their steady stream of offerings, began pressuring Zeus to fix the mess he had helped create. Bowing to the pressure, Zeus sent Hermes, the messenger god, down to the underworld with a decree. Hades had to let Persephone go. Hades, ever the pragmatist, agreed. He knew he couldn't win a war against a world without life. He prepared his chariot to return his new bride to her mother, but just before they left, he offered her a final parting gift, a pomegranate. What happened next is often romanticized, but the oldest texts are pretty clear. As Persephone herself later recounted, Hades forced her to take it with violence against her will. He made her eat a few of the blood-red seeds, some accounts say 6, others 4. He knew exactly what he was doing. An ancient law of the cosmos dictated that anyone who tasted the food of the underworld was bound to it forever. And when Persephone was reunited with Demeter, the joy was immediate but short-lived. Demeter sensed something was wrong, and Persephone tearfully confessed what happened. Because of those few seeds, she could never be completely free. A compromise was reached, brokered by Zeus. For part of the year, the months of summer and spring, Persephone would live on Earth with her mother, and the world would flourish. But for the remaining months, she would have to return to the underworld as its queen, plunging the world into the cold, barren winter of Demeter's grief. This cycle became the seasons, a cosmic reminder of a mother's sorrow and a daughter's forced sacrifice. Now, I don't run ads in the middle of these videos or take on sponsors because this channel is entirely self-funded by viewers like you. I do, however, have one thing you might be interested in, and that's my fantasy all-access library. It's where you can get all of my fantasy and mythology-inspired books, which my team and I have written in a huge shared universe where basically every mythology coexists. I think I really like it. It's how I keep this channel going, so check the link down below if you want to support what we do here. Alright, now most stories end there, with Persephone as a tragic victim forever split between two worlds. That's not the whole picture. While she may have entered the underworld against her will, she grew into her role as its queen with terrifying authority. She wasn't just Hades' wife, she was a ruler in her own right, and she was not to be crossed. Take the story of Adonis, a mortal man so beautiful that both Persephone and Aphrodite fell in love with him. Unable to decide who should have him, time, Zeus stepped in and divided Adonis' time into thirds. 1/3 with Aphrodite, 1/3 with Persephone, and 1/3 to himself. But Adonis preferred the goddess of love, and when it came time to choose where to spend his final third of the year, he picked Aphrodite. Persephone was enraged. In a fit of jealous fury, she sent a wild boar to gore Adonis during a hunt. He died bleeding into Aphrodite's arms, all because he scorned the queen of the underworld. Her jealousy was a powerful weapon, and she wielded it without hesitation. Before Persephone's arrival, Hades had a lover, a nymph named Minthe. After Persephone was crowned queen, Minthe foolishly began bragging that she was more beautiful and that Hades would soon cast Persephone aside and return to her. When word of this reached Persephone, she didn't just get angry, she walked over to the nymph and personally trampled her underfoot, grinding her into the dirt until nothing was left. Some say Demeter then transformed the remains into the mint plant, an herb forever associated with funerary rites, a permanent reminder of Minthe's arrogance and Persephone's brutal defense of her throne. But she wasn't always a force of destruction. In the myth of Orpheus, the musician who traveled to the underworld to retrieve his dead wife Eurydice, it was Persephone who was moved. His song of grief was so beautiful that it brought tears to the eyes of the queen of the dead. She was the one who convinced Hades to bend the ancient law and allow a mortal soul to return to the world of the living. Of course, it came with a condition. Orpheus could not look back at his wife until they both reached the surface, and in the final moments his doubt got the better of him and he turned, losing her forever. But for a brief moment, Persephone's capacity for empathy nearly changed fate itself. The myth of Persephone wasn't just a story, it was the foundation for some of the most important religious practices in ancient Greece. And these weren't just about explaining winter, they were about confronting the finality of death itself. For nearly 2,000 years, the city of Eleusis, near Athens, hosted the Eleusinian mysteries. These were secret religious rites centered on the story of Demeter and Persephone. What made them revolutionary was their accessibility. They were open to anyone, including women, slaves, and non-Greeks, as long as they spoke Greek and hadn't committed murder. The only other rule was absolute secrecy. Revealing what went on inside the mysteries was a crime punishable by death. The rites unfolded over 9 days, mirroring Demeter's 9-day search. Initiates would fast, purify themselves, and walk into a grand procession from Athens to Eleusis. Inside the sanctuary, they experienced a ritual drama that reenacted Persephone's descent, Demeter's desperate search, and finally Persephone's ascent. The goal was to give initiates a profound spiritual experience, a glimpse of the divine cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Those who completed the mysteries were believed to have conquered their fear of death, having been promised a blessing and privileged afterlife instead of a dreary, shadowy existence in Hades. Another major festival, the Thesmophoria, was held in honor of the two goddesses, but this one was exclusively for women. Celebrated in autumn around the time seeds were sown, it was a 3-day festival focused on both agricultural and human fertility. On the first day, women ascended to a sacred shrine. On the second, a day of fasting called the Nesteia, they mourned alongside Demeter, sitting on the ground and abstaining from food to mimic her grief. On the final day, Caligeneia, or beautiful birth, they shifted from mourning to celebration, praying for their own fertility and the fertility of the land. The festival involved secret rites, including the ritual burial of piglets whose decomposed remains from the previous year would be mixed with seeds to ensure a bountiful harvest. The Thesmophoria gave citizen women a rare space away from men to exercise religious authority and connect their own lives to the divine cycles embodied by Persephone. She wasn't just a distant myth in this case, she was an active part of their world, someone who brought both new crops and new life. Now, Persephone's journey from maiden to queen and from victim to ruler is a story of transformation. She embodies the idea that life and death aren't opposites, but two sides of the same coin, forever linked in a cycle of descent and return. She is both the flower and the darkness beneath the earth, a goddess of terrifying power and profound compassion. And if you enjoy these deep dives into the complex figures of mythology, you might want to check out our community that I've built on a platform called School, where we go even deeper. You can get access to all of the ebooks and audiobooks from my mythology-inspired novels, with at least one new book released every month. Plus, you get to join me for weekly live calls where we discuss mythology, writing, and everything in between. So it's the best way to support this channel, become part of the community. And if that's interesting to you, the link is down below, and I will see you in the next video.